everybody, I'm sure you recognise where I am right now. I'm at the Earlham and Cadishead District War Memorial, and I'm sure you're wondering why I'm here. Well, as many of you know, today is November the 11th, and November the 11th is known as Remembrance Day, and it's a day where we remember all the soldiers, sailors, airmen and anyone else who works in the armed forces who's died or been injured while trying to keep us safe. You have to come to the War Memorial to remember those people who've died in the war. This bench reminds us that it's a place to sit and reflect, remembering loved ones gone from sight but never from our hearts. And I love this message: be happy in the moment, that's enough. Each moment is all we need, not more. As I've told you in previous assemblies, this War Memorial commemorates those who lost their lives in World War I, World War II and during the conflict in Afghanistan. Many of you in school and the local community will have family members listed on this memorial. And if you remember last year, I told you all about Hugh Connor, who died in World War I, William Burchill and Frederick Noel Haywood, who died in World War II, and Simon Annis, who died in Afghanistan. This year I want to tell you about another young man called Richard William Lowe, who died during World War II. Richard William Lowe is the great uncle of Year 2's Matilda Keogh. Richard William Lowe grew up in Cadishead and lived on Allenby Road, and I have got loads of artefacts belonging to Richard and photographs of him that I'm going to share with you, but I'm going to do that when I get back to school, so I'll see you there.
So here I am back at school, ready to tell you about the very short but amazing and brave life of Richard William Lowe. Richard William Lowe was born on the 10th of January 1922 and died just aged 20 on the 3rd of April 1942. Richard was the third son of William and Lillian Lowe of Allenby Road, Cadishead, and his father was also a veteran of the First World War, which means he was a soldier in the First World War. He was educated at Cadishead Senior School and then took a job as a plater boy. On the 13th of July 1937, he enlisted into the Navy aged just 15 and a half as a boy sailor. He joined HMS Caledonia on the 2nd of June 1938, and from the 3rd of June to the 9th of September 1938, he was serving on board HMS Diomede. He sailed on board RMS Edinburgh to Cape Town, South Africa, where on the 13th of October, he joined HMS Neptune. He was on board HMS Neptune in South Africa when war with Germany was declared. On the 10th of January 1940, his birthday, his 18th birthday, his rank changed from boy to ordinary seaman, and later that year, on a very proud day on the 9th of October, he was promoted to able seaman. Richard then went on to serve on HMS Ajax, HMS Exeter, HMS Drake, HMS Defiance, and finally he joined HMS Newmarket on the 28th of October 1941. In April 1942, the Newmarket was deployed as an escort to a Russian convoy from Iceland, and unfortunately, on the 3rd of April 1942, Richard was swept overboard and lost at sea. Richard is commemorated on the Plymouth Naval Memorial, Devon, and one of his most treasured possessions was Richard's ditty box and diary, which he'd had since he joined. In the diary, he recorded his day-to-day experiences and impressions of how he felt when he was fighting, particularly in the Mediterranean, where he had lots of clashes with Italian forces. Other things that were returned to his parents, including personal letters. 5 of these were unopened. Some of Richard's friends also wrote to Richard's parents to tell them how sorry they were to hear of his death, and I'm going to read one of those letters to you now. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Lowe, I'm writing this letter on behalf of myself and the others who were Richard's closest friends to say how deeply we sympathise with you over losing him at such an early age. We can understand how you feel. We ourselves were heartbroken. It was like losing a brother, but our grief won't be like that, like anything like that of his father and mother. We thought that you maybe like to retain something that was his own, so we saved his ditty box, which he's used since he was a boy. There are one or two things which we will send with Len Ballanley, who you know is coming on leave soon. There doesn't seem to be much more we can say, only that Richard was one of the finest lads we ever met, and we certainly miss him. In fact, we can say in truth, the whole ship mourns his loss. And in conclusion, if there is anything you'd like to know or have us do, you only have to drop us a line and we will be only too glad to do our best. We remain yours sincerely, Thomas Muldoon. And as you can see on the screen, Richard's parents were also written to by the King at the time, King George, and he wrote, "The Queen and I offer you our heartfelt sympathy in your great sorrow. We pray that your country's gratitude for a life so nobly given in its service may bring you some measure of consolation." And I'd like to think that the letters from Richard's friends and the letter from the King helped Richard's family at that really sad time. 3 of Richard's brothers, Eric, Harold and John James, also known as Jimmy, served in the armed forces. Eric was in the Royal Navy, Harold in the Royal Army Service Corps, and Jimmy in the Canadian Army. So, how do we remember? How do we celebrate Remembrance Day? Maybe you could pause the video now and have a chat with your class, with your teacher, about what we can do to celebrate. Here are some of the things that you may have come up with. Excuse me. You can wear a poppy, buy a snap band or any of our other poppy products. Lay a wreath at the cenotaph with classmates and friends. Some of you I know will go with brownies or cubs and scouts. You could plant some poppies. You could attend a Remembrance Day ceremony. You could pause for 2 minutes of silence at 11 a.m. on November the 11th. That's something that we'll be doing in school. You could plan and participate a commemorative ceremony at school or within your own community group. And simply by watching this assembly, you are celebrating Remembrance Day. If you remember at the very beginning of the film, I mentioned a little phrase or a little quote that I really liked. And I'd like to say it again, because I think sometimes it's easy. We get worried and we start worrying about all the things we can't control instead of just enjoying what's happening now. So remember, be happy in the moment. That's enough. Each moment is all we need, not more. So firstly, I'd like to thank Matilda's family for sharing this amazing story, the amazing life story of Richard with us, and allowing me to have a look through his ditty box and to touch his diary and experience, see firsthand lots of Richard's belongings. That really was very special. And I'd also like to thank you for listening.